It's time to talk about the 3DS and it adds some of the games to the backlog. I really think that the 3DS is a very, very innovative console for people that did use or enjoy the 3D functionality. Yes, it got tedious after a while, and it could have, it hurt your eyes as you played it for a while, especially for some games. But I think some of the 3D magic that Nintendo was able to create, especially with their first party library, has never been replicated. I think games like, for example, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon, which recently saw a release on the Switch, I think that game was much better suited for the 3DS, especially for those playing that game in 3D. When I played it, I really enjoyed it. But the 3DS in general was a very, very solid console. Just the build, the feel, the overall look of the console was amazing. I think Nintendo did a very admirable job. And besides the initial pricing hiccup during its launch, I think the 3DS was a very successful console overall. I know they had to add some, or they needed to add, what is it, another thumbstick functionality, the right thumbstick functionality to their console, which I think should have been done from the get go. But once they did add that, I think it made the console a lot more accessible, at least to me, and a lot more playable for some of the 3D games that were on the system. The 3DS, I think, is a great system for collectors too. There are a lot of amazing RPGs on the system, both by Nintendo themselves and by third parties. And it's also a hub of a very good selection of tactical strategy games. If you like those, for example, Ghost Recon Shadow Wars is a very solid tactical strategy game for the system. But it has also had a lot of indie titles that kind of sort of paved the way for what indie is today, like Cave Story, for example. The 3DS version of Cave Story was very, very popular and a cult classic amongst many fans and really strived in that environment. You can look at Pokemon games as well. I think Pokemon did really, really well on the console, arguably better than what it did on the Nintendo Switch, at least in my opinion, even though I really adore and admire the games on the Switch for in the Pokemon franchise. But really, if you look back at the 3DS, I think the Pokemon games on there were magnificent, and I think are a staple of any collector's. If you collect the 3DS, basically, you should, I think that should be one of your targets. One of your goals is to get and play Pokemon games on this wonderful console. The 3DS, of course, like every other console, had shovelware on it, so you had to be careful of that, not to pick shovelware. But that's a problem with every console. I mean, shovelware is just something that is unavoidable. I think it's a lot more prevalent now with the digital storefront that we see, especially on the Switch and even other consoles. But yeah, I mean, definitely it was an issue then. But if you look at the overall library of the 3DS versus some of the other consoles, like for example the DS, I think the ratio of shovelware to quality games is a lot higher on the 3DS than say DS, or maybe even, of course, well, the Wii. But yeah, all in all, I think the 3DS has a lot of really quality games, especially if you're a fan of RPGs or niche Japanese titles. The likes of Yokai Watch. There were how many Yokai Watches on the series? A bunch of them, and they're all pretty solid. Well, actually, I take that back. I have seen gameplay of them, and I really want to play them, but I have not played them myself. But they look solid. How about that? Unfortunately, the 3DS was not backwards compatible, so, games could not be imported. I don't know if that was the case with all games, some of the games, but that was one of the flaws that I think Nintendo corrected moving forward with their consoles. At least I think they did. Maybe they didn't. I don't quite remember. But yeah, the 3DS, to my knowledge, was not compatible with other regions, which I think hurt its overall collective value. Having said that, though, the 3DS did have a amazing selection of games in the US or, other North American regions. So it wasn't like we were struggling to find quality games for this console. That was not the case at all. But, it would have been nice to have a little bit more freedom and basically choice when it comes to importing games, especially a lot of niche Japanese titles, visual novels that perhaps we can't play, but at least would have been a novelty to collect, if nothing else. I think one of the series that really strived on the 3DS was the Fire Emblem series. If you look back and see the quality and quantity of games that came out for that particular franchise is amazing. I think it really did put Fire Emblem on the map, at least as far as I'm concerned. Before that, Fire Emblem was a thing with Nintendo. They never really gave up on it, but it's really the 3DS games that made this franchise into basically what it is today, an amazing, top tier strategy RPG franchise, probably one of the biggest tactical strategy RPG franchises currently in all of gaming, at least, what I think. But yeah, it had great third-party support, first-party support, of course, and overall it was a very successful console. And I think down the road it is going to be an even more collectible console. The library is not huge, so there's a lot of, completionists out there. However, of course, one of the most notorious games for it is very expensive. But, that game is just a VGP print away from becoming a main staple for everyone. Now, whether that's going to happen or not, who knows? But you just never know. So yeah, these are the 4 games that I've selected for the 3DS to be entered in this year's backlog. We have Tekken. I have not played a Tekken game on the 3DS, so Tekken 3D should be interesting. Stella Glow is a game that I've already beaten on the 3DS. Absolutely love it, and you know what? I play my games again, so I'm going to try it out. Yokai Watch. Now, I could have gone with the original Yokai Watch, but I think Yokai Watch 2, from what I've heard, is a little bit better than the first one. I don't know. I'll find out. But I'm putting a Yokai Watch into the mix. And, of course, Castlevania, Lords of Shadow, Mirrors of Fate. Konami Classic. I need to play this game and beat it. So these 4 games are going to be added to the backlog, and we'll see what the drawing tells me. Hello, everybody. It's time to make the final selections. If you remember, Metaphor ReFantazio is the game that I'm currently playing on the PlayStation 5, so that's game 1. I need to select 2 more games to add to my rotation. However, they cannot be part of the same console, and at least one of them needs to be a handheld game. So far, the games on the top that you've seen are the ones that I've added to my backlog, the ones that I want to play. And since the list is small, at least initially, the likelihood of these games being picked is pretty high. I did a count for you, and the number of games on there is 25. So I got my handy dandy random number generator here. I'm just going to click the spin button, and pardon the ads, this is my son's phone. Not that, I wouldn't have it or anything as well. And the number seems to have landed on 19. So 19 is what? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. The PlayStation 3. Agarest War. Okay, so now we have the PlayStation 3 Record of Agarest War as the second game on our challenge. Need to pick one more, and this last game, of course, has to be a handheld game, so it can't be any games from the PlayStation 3. So let's try this again. Another spin. Come on, there you go. Pick something that is not on the PlayStation 3. I may have to remove it if I get too many PlayStation 3 hits, but it looks like that's not going to be the case because we landed on number 2. Number 2 is Monster Lab. So there you have it. The 3 games that have currently been selected for me to play. I'm going to play them hopefully through completion. This is going to be a really short video, but there's going to be a lot more to come. But now that this chaotic session is over, I can go back to my regular output of videos once a week or maybe a little bit more than that. But we'll see. So yeah, Monster Lab, Metaphor ReFantazio, and Record of Agarest War 0 are the first 3 selections for 2025. Let's see what happens. Bye. So we got a real quick update. I have already dropped the first game. Monster Lab was just not working. I'm not going to waste my time in 2025. If there's a game I want to drop, it's going to drop immediately. Anyways, we have 19 games to go through. The PS3s are not applicable in this drawing because we need a handheld. So let's go. 19 games. Which one is it coming out on? The answer is, oh, I can't even see. What is it, 2? It is 2. Metal Slug 7. So there we go.